who carried silence like a weight. She had prayed for healing for years, for her daughter who was born with a rare condition. Every morning she lit a candle and whispered the same words, "Please let her live fully." The diagnosis never changed. The silence never lifted. Yet something in the woman transformed. She began to see beauty where others saw brokenness. She found laughter in small things, her daughter's drawings, her smile, her stubborn spirit. God didn't speak, she told me, but I saw him in everything. That's when I realized sometimes silence is filled with clues, not direct answers, but breadcrumbs, hints of presence in unexpected places, a kind word from a stranger, a line in a book, a sudden peace in the middle of chaos. God's silence may not mean his absence. It may mean his changing the language, moving from voice to vision, from answers to awareness. What we call silence may be his way of asking us to look again, to feel deeper, to notice him not just in thunder, but in the whisper of life itself. He may be quiet, but he is not gone. There's a subtle danger in thinking silence means indifference. Our hearts begin to spiral. If God cared, wouldn't he speak? But consider the most profound relationships in life. Silence doesn't always mean disconnection. Sometimes it means comfort. When a friend sits beside you in grief, saying nothing, their presence means more than 1,000 words. When lovers walk hand in hand beneath the stars without speaking, that silence is sacred, not empty. Could it be the same with God? Could he be beside you, listening, holding, strengthening, even as you hear nothing? The psalmist once cried, "Why are you silent?" And yet he kept praying. That's faith, not in getting what we want, but in holding on when we receive nothing. We don't follow God because he always speaks. We follow him because we believe he is who he says he is, even when we don't feel him. Faith isn't built on constant affirmation. It's built on consistency in the silence. We keep showing up, keep trusting, keep walking, and somewhere in the quiet, we begin to sense it. Not words, but presence. Not solutions, but peace. God's silence isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning of something deeper. I remember a night when everything in me felt unraveled. Life had shifted so quickly, and all I wanted was one word from above. Just one. I sat outside under the stars, silent tears sliding down my cheeks. The wind was still, the sky vast and voiceless. And then a strange thought crossed my mind. Not a booming voice, but a gentle awareness. What if the silence is holy? That thought startled me. I had always seen silence as lack of answers, of direction, of comfort. But what if it was presence in disguise? Sacred stillness. What if silence wasn't a punishment, but a posture? One that asks us not to strive, but to receive. To listen not just with ears, but with hearts. I looked up at the stars that night and realized they didn't speak either, and yet they declare glory. Maybe God is like that sometimes, speaking not through sound, but through beauty, through wonder, through the steady rhythm of the universe that keeps turning even when everything feels broken. That night, I didn't hear what I wanted, but I left with peace. And sometimes that's the better gift. Children often tug at their parents' sleeve, asking questions, seeking attention. Sometimes the parent answers immediately. Other times they simply smile or gently hold the child without words. The child may not understand, but the love is no less real. So it is with our Heavenly Father. We cry, we tug, we plead, and often he answers. But sometimes he is silent, not because he loves less, but because he is loving differently. Maybe he is waiting for us to slow down, to simply sit with him even without answers. In our culture, we're addicted to resolution. Every problem must be solved. Every silence must be broken. But the soul doesn't always grow in sound. It grows in surrender. When God is silent, he may be inviting us to shift our focus, not to what he gives, but who he is, not to the solution, but the source. The silence invites us to fall in love with his presence again, not just his voice. And when we do, we discover that he is enough, even in the quiet, maybe especially in the quiet. Faith isn't always about answers. Sometimes it's simply about staying when the answers don't come. There's a quiet resilience in those who have wrestled with silence and remained. Like weathered trees that have withstood 100 storms, their roots run deep, not because they were never shaken, but because they didn't uproot when the winds came. I spoke once with an old man who had buried both his wife and son in the span of 2 years. He said, God didn't say a word through it, not one, but he gave me breath each morning. He gave me strength to walk into that church, even when my legs didn't want to. That was his language. I never forgot those words. We want God to speak in ways we understand, but sometimes he speaks in survival, in strength to take the next step, in the ability to love again, in the quiet gift of endurance. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something deeper is being formed in us, something that only silence can produce. The roots of faith do not grow in loud environments. They grow in the dark, where the heart must learn to rely not on feelings, but on truth. And the truth is this: even when God is silent, he is still God. Sometimes the silence of God is not about us at all. It's about timing, perspective, eternity. We live in minutes and days. He sees across generations. What feels like a delay to us may be the orchestration of something eternal. Imagine a tapestry woven thread by thread. From beneath it looks chaotic, knots, tangles, no clear pattern. But from above it is a masterpiece. Our view is limited. So when God is silent, perhaps he's weaving a part of the story that won't make sense until later. There are promises fulfilled long after the original prayers are whispered. Miracles that come not in our timing, but in the fullness of time. Faith is trusting, not that we'll get what we want, but that what we're given is ultimately good even if we don't see it yet. So we wait, not with bitterness, but with expectancy, not passively, but faithfully, because waiting in silence is not avoidable.